Now it's time for tip-episodes with quick tips you should know. Techniques you can implement into your workflow right here on A Tale, oh yeah, A Tale of Two Hygienists.
All right, welcome listeners into this week's tip episode. I'm really excited. I am joined by Sebastian Green-Duncan. Sebastian, thank you so much for taking some time to spend with me on this day.
No, thank you. I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, well, you had a very interesting post that I want to talk about. And I want the dental professionals out there to really be kind of like using their brains and critically thinking. But before we get into that, do you mind just giving our listeners just a little introduction of who you are and kind of what you're about?
Yeah, so I'm Sebastian Green-Duncan. I am based out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm actually a territory sales representative for Benco Dental and have been for about 2.5 years now. I had a dental staffing background for about 4 years based out of Birmingham, Alabama. So that's basically the gist of it and how I got into dentistry.
So I think probably the dental staffing background probably is going to play more into it than probably your current role.
Correct.
But you had put a post out there about a new ruling that had come down, and I was hoping that we could just chat a little bit about it. Do you remember what you posted?
I did, yes. It had to do with the Federal Trade Commission's non-compete ruling that just happened back in April.
There have been so many changes with employment law in the last several years, and neither of us are experts in all of this,
right?
But it's one of the things that came out just a couple of years ago, if everyone remembers, was there are, I believe it's New York or something, that they wanted to have more transparency in job postings. They're saying, hey, when you post a job, then you have to put like the actual wages that could be earned or whatever. And I think I don't think that was a federal law. I think that was kind of regional or maybe even state law in some areas. So people are acutely aware that there are changes in legislation. So when the Federal Trade Commission said, hey, we're going away from non-competes, what does that do kind of on the bigger picture for people?
So honestly, 1 in 5 Americans are, affected by a non-compete. So a non-compete basically is just an agreement between an employer and an employee that talks about how if you leave this position, you cannot work somewhere, normally geographically, a certain mile radius from where you currently are for X amount of years. So, and how that pertains to dentistry is a dentist owner bringing on an associate dentist and saying, hey, you can work with me for X, however long you want to work for me. But if you ever leave this office, you cannot practice as a dentist within 10 miles for 2 years. And so basically, that's just an example. It could be a larger radius. It could be more years. But basically, that dentist owner is wanting to prevent an associate coming in, learning the patient base, and then preventing them from opening a practice across the street and saying, hey, I'm taking half your patients. They like me better.
Yeah. Well, and I get it, honestly, from the owner dentist perspective of it, because there's not really like trade secrets necessarily in dentistry, but there are practices that we do in each of our dental practices that make us either more or less successful than our competitors in that surrounding region. So we don't want to give all of our quote unquote trade secrets to the person that we're also giving every other patient to, or sharing our patient base with, spending our marketing dollars on getting new customers, new patients for that provider. And then all of a sudden the provider is going to open up right next door and be like, hey, I'm taking all these people that you said that do like me more anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm going to continue their care. And I'm going to take 100% of the profit. So I do get it from that perspective. But it seems to me, though, that this is probably going to impact DSOs and like organized dentistry probably in an even bigger, meaningful way. Because I know that we even had at several of the DSOs I were out, like, hey, you can't work for a competitor, for a year in the same, city even.
Right.
And so that's going to hit the hard too.
And honestly, this occurred on April 23rd. So there's a grace period that we're going to see. They say it's about 120 days before this fully goes into effect. So it'll go into effect around September, but as I suspected, there's going to be challenges to this ruling. And there's already 3 major federal lawsuits, 2 in Texas and 1 in Pennsylvania. One of them is by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And so they don't want this to go into effect because they don't want to, lose their good, loyal employees that are going to be like, hey, let's go somewhere else. Let's make more money. Let's do other things. So
I love how it's interdepartmental, like within the government, like they're both fighting each other.
Exactly.
Like, how do you, this is all supposition and like conjecture, but like, how do you suppose that that's going to really affect any of the dental team members? So like your hygienists, your assistants, your front office workers, not a lot of them have non-competes currently, do they?
No, not that I'm aware of. Normally, it really boils down to just your associates that are coming in and actually practicing production and whatnot on an actual patient. I have never heard of a hygienist, even in my staffing. I have never heard of a hygienist signing a non-compete unless it's in a larger DSO setting where they're, getting a sign-on bonus or paying towards student loan debt or something like that. And that occurred a lot in my staffing because we'd have like Aspen or Heartland or, Dental Care Alliance just call us up and say, hey, I've got to have a hygienist in this area. I'm willing to pay $10,000 sign-on bonus and pay X towards student loans. Well, they did that with dentists even more. And so that may come into effect with hygienists and assistants, but really and truly, it's probably going to be more on the dental or dentist level.
I would imagine it also hit probably the C-suite, right? So we might even see a shakeup at I don't know if I should say the name, Crest and Colgate. Like the two biggies there,
right?
Might trade teams. They might. There's got to be some sort of intellectual property protection there.
Yeah.
But even chief marketing officers or CFOs, from one brand to another, even within, like you said, Dental Care Alliance to Aspen to Heartland to whoever, that mobility could really open up.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up because this ruling does exclude 1%. And of that 1%, it is excluding your senior level executives.
Oh,
so
okay.
This could, and I've been doing my research on this to prepare for this podcast, this will exclude that higher level management, higher level senior leadership team and whatnot from getting out of that non-compete.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, not to pretend, but we would see probably too big of a shakeup, and I don't know if we'd all be able to handle it.
Exactly. But yeah, awesome. It's definitely something to keep watch on. I know, like, for example, in my industry in sales, they're saying that this could potentially increase the amount of businesses opening each year. They're saying, from what I've read, 8,500 new businesses and an additional $300 billion per year in higher wages. So you're going to have, if you have a non-compete or have a associate or an employee that has a non-compete, you're really going to have to sit down with them because after this ruling goes into effect, you are legally supposed to tell your employee that you have that non-compete with that, hey, this is no longer enforceable. So you have to have that conversation. It's going to be weird. It's going to be awkward. But from what I'm reading, this is the conversation that's going to have to take place. Honestly, I don't think that it's a good conversation to have because it's going to be opening that door. If that employee's unhappy, they're going to be sayonara and moving on to greener pastures. Yeah. But I think there's a conversation that should be had pertaining to, hey, are you happy? The biggest thing is with employers, they want to make their employees happy. With us being employees, if we're happy, everybody's happy. So I think that this will open the door for, people getting raises and more benefits or more perks down the road if they want to keep that associate or employee happy. So we'll see. It's going to be a toss-up, but it's going to be interesting.
No, I mean, we go through, I mean, as leaders, like we go through all these opportunities in our, coaching and, whatever you call it. Everyone has kind of a different way of saying it, but these critiques and things. But this is just another opportunity, another touch point that we can use, like you said, to, check in with our employees, see how they're doing, let them know that we love them and care for them and that we're appreciative of the work that they're doing. Let them know that they're part of a team, that we still want them there. It also gives them an opportunity to really express their needs at that point. If they're a little bit scared, now they're going to feel maybe a little bit more empowered to be like, well, actually, I do have some needs that need to be met, and you're not really meeting them. And they're not going to be working out of fear, but they're working out of a different perspective. But man, this is great. This is one of those things that you think that just like there are no new topics in dentistry, and then something like this happens. So I'm so glad that you posted it. If someone wanted to reach out to you, asking any questions, how might they reach you?
Well, obviously I'm on LinkedIn. I have all the social media accounts and whatnot. They can also email me at sgreen, just like the color, at benco.com.
Sebastian, thank you so much for being on.
Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate it.
A tale of two hygienists.